The sun was already dipping low, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. As an old pickup truck rumbled down a dusty country road, the camera follows the truck, dust swirling in its wake, as it approaches a small, weathered farmhouse standing alone among endless fields. Inside the truck, a young woman named Clara sits in silence, clutching a single worn suitcase. Her eyes are fixed on the window, but she isn't really seeing the landscape. Her mind is far away, replaying the painful words and whispers from her hometown. People had always talked about Clara, her weight, her quietness, her inability to fit in. She had grown up in a place where everyone knew everyone, and everyone had an opinion. At first, the whispers were just that, soft, almost easy to ignore. But as she grew older, the whispers grew louder, sharper, and more cruel. They followed her everywhere. At school, in the market, even at church. "She's too heavy," they'd say. "She never talks. She'll never amount to anything." Clara tried to ignore them, tried to keep her head down and focus on her studies, on her chores, on anything that would keep her mind off the constant judgment. But it was impossible to escape. The words clung to her like a second skin, making her feel smaller and smaller with each passing day. Then, one day, everything changed. A rumor started. No one knew where it came from, but it spread like wildfire. Suddenly, Clara was no longer just the quiet, overweight girl. She was a problem that needed to be fixed. The town elders called her parents in for a meeting. They spoke in hushed tones, their faces grave. When Clara's mother came home that night, her eyes were red from crying. "We think it's best if you go away for a while," her mother said, her voice trembling. "There's a farmer outside of town, Luke. He's agreed to take you in. You'll work on his farm, learn some responsibility. Maybe it will help." Clara wanted to protest, to scream that she hadn't done anything wrong. But the words caught in her throat. She packed her things in silence, her heart heavy with shame and fear. The next morning, she climbed into the old pickup truck, her father's eyes avoiding hers, and they drove away from the only home she'd ever known. As the truck rattled down the dirt road, Clara felt like she was being exiled, cast out from the world she knew. She wondered if she would ever belong anywhere. The farm of strangers. The truck finally stopped in front of the farmhouse. Clara stepped out, feeling the heavy, humid air cling to her skin. She looked up at the house, its paint peeling and windows clouded with dust. It looked nothing like home. Luke, the farmer, stood on the porch. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a deep tan from years under the sun. His clothes were simple but clean, his face unreadable. He didn't smile, but he didn't frown either. He simply nodded at her suitcase and motioned toward the porch. "There's a room for you upstairs," he said, his voice low and steady. "You'll start work tomorrow. We get up early here." Clara nodded, her throat tight. She followed him inside, her suitcase bumping against the steps. The house was quiet, filled with the faint smell of earth and old wood. In the kitchen, an older man with a white beard sat at the table, sipping tea. He looked up as Clara entered, his eyes kind but sharp, as if he could see right through her. "This is my father, Samuel," Luke said. "He helps out around here." Samuel nodded, offering a small, encouraging smile. "Welcome, Clara. It's good to have another pair of hands." Clara managed a weak smile in return, but her heart was pounding. She had no idea what life here would be like, but she knew there was no going back. That night, Clara lay awake in her small attic room, listening to the sounds of the farm, the distant lowing of cows, the chirping of crickets, the creak of the old house settling into the night. She felt more alone than she ever had before. The next morning came early. Before the sun had even risen, Luke knocked on her door. "Time to get up," he called. Clara dressed quickly, her hands shaking. She met Luke and Samuel in the kitchen, where a simple breakfast of bread and eggs waited. No one spoke much. After eating, they headed outside. The work was harder than anything Clara had ever done. She fed the animals, carried heavy buckets of water, hauled bales of hay. Her hands blistered, her muscles ached, and sweat soaked through her clothes. Luke gave instructions in a calm, matter-of-fact way, never raising his voice, but never offering comfort either. He expected her to try, to learn, to keep going. At night, Clara collapsed onto her bed, exhausted. The words of the townspeople echoed in her mind, each one cutting deeper. She wondered if she would ever be good enough, breaking the cycle. But as the days passed, something began to change. Clara's body, though still heavy, grew stronger. She learned to carry water without spilling, to climb fences without fear. The pain in her muscles became a quiet pride. For the first time, she started to believe she could do more than people said. More importantly, away from the town's harsh stares, Clara began to hear her own thoughts. She realized she had spent her whole life letting others define her worth. Here on the farm, she was just Clara, someone with work to do, someone who could learn and grow. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of color, Luke asked Clara to ride with him to the far edge of the property. They drove for what felt like miles, fields stretching endlessly in every direction. When they finally stopped on a hilltop, Clara saw it. Thousands of acres, bathed in golden light. This wasn't just a farm. It was a world of possibility. Luke stood beside her, silent for a long moment. Then he said, "This land has been in my family for generations. It's not about money or status. It's about taking care of what you've been given." Clara looked at him, surprised. She had assumed Luke was poor, that this farm was a punishment. But now she saw the truth. Luke chose to live simply, to work alongside those he trusted. Here, value wasn't measured by appearances or wealth, but by character and kindness. Finding her strength. Over time, Clara discovered the truth. Luke wasn't a poor farmer. He was a steward of a vast, inherited land. He could have hired many workers, but he chose to live simply and work alongside those he trusted. Here, value wasn't measured by looks or money, but by character and kindness. Clara learned to care for animals, plant seeds, and fix broken equipment. She started cooking meals for the workers, tending to injured animals, and finding ways to make the farm run better. Luke noticed. The older man noticed. Even the land seemed to respond to her care. Clara had arrived believing she was a burden, but she was becoming an asset, a friend, and a vital part of the farm's life. She found herself smiling more often, laughing without fear of being mocked. Slowly, the shame that had been forced on her began to fall away like the dust from her shoes at the end of a long day. As months passed, Clara's confidence grew. She began taking initiative, finding ways to make the farm run more smoothly. She started cooking meals for the workers, fixing old equipment, and tending to injured animals. Luke noticed. The older man with the white beard noticed. Even the land seemed to notice, responding to her care. Clara had come here believing she was a punishment, a burden, but she was becoming an asset, a trusted presence, someone who belonged. A new beginning. One day, Luke finally told Clara why he had agreed to take her in. He said, "Sometimes, life sends you away from places where you don't belong, so you can find the place where you do." He wanted her to see that her value was never determined by the cruelty of others. Clara no longer saw herself as the girl the town had labeled. She was strong, capable, and loved by those who mattered. The farm had given her a second chance, but more importantly, it had given her the courage to create a new life. Standing on the same hilltop where she had first seen the endless fields, Clara realized she hadn't just been sent here to be changed. She had been sent here to change everything, including herself. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more stories of hope and transformation to life. And if you've ever been judged unfairly, share your story in the comments below. Your words could be the encouragement someone else needs today.